There was a forbidden kingdom at the end of the earth, blanketed by miasma, a place where humans dare not tread due to the fact that it was home to monstrous vassals, and their king who once dominated and devoured mankind. On one particular night, a carriage arrived at the kingdom's gate, and escorts delivered a girl named Saraphy in chains before leaving. They presented her to the monsters on the other side, who then took her in their carriage to the palace, where one of the king's subjects, Anubis, presented her to the king as the 99th offering. As soon as the girl was asked to raise her head, the veil covering her face fell, revealing her to be scrawny, easily the scrawniest sacrifice the beasts had ever seen. Anubis thus suggested that the king immediately get rid of her, since she wouldn't be able to nourish him. But before he could finish his sentence, the girl spoke up. She casually referred to Anubis as a dog, asking him if he didn't know he was being a bit rude. While the two of them argued, Anubis was asked to leave by the king, but he tried to talk back, resulting in the beastly king roaring at him and forcing him to retreat. After Anubis left, the girl called the king short-tempered, advising him not to snap at people, else he'd be all alone someday. Hearing her complaints, her keepers, two little ball monsters named Sai and Klops, yelled at her to apologize to the king. Seeing the girl didn't fear him, the Beast King walked up and grabbed her head with his arm. As he tried talking down on her with a scary tone, she called his paw pads squishy and started to fawn over them. Sari explained she wasn't scared of death because she had no home nor family waiting for her if she tried to escape. Perplexed, the Beast King asked for her name, and she told him. When she asked for his, he told her that he didn't have a personal name. The blood in his veins is what proved he was royalty. He informed her that the sacrificial ritual was on the next night of Revelation, and until then, he'd keep her by his side to see how long her bravado would last. The Chancellors later had a meeting and were frustrated because the king allowed the sacrifice to roam about the palace. Anubis tried to reassure them that the girl was still bound with chains, but they had issues with their king's behaviors, just like the previous kings. It was the late king who made peace with the humans during the Great War, which happened 100 years ago, and because of that, the rebels who refused to abide by the decree plagued their land to this day. The late king came up with the truce, whereby a human sacrifice would be made, so as to establish that the humans were not the monsters' equals. And so, the Chancellors asked Anubis to advise His Majesty that it wasn't the time for games, which might leave him vulnerable. Seeing Sari outside his room, the king carried her inside. She then explained that the reason she went out was because his room was empty, and she was bored, so she wanted to move around a bit. She asked him to try using flowers to decorate his place, but he explained that flowers do not grow in the miasma of this land. The miasma would leave only when the full moon shone on the night of Revelation. He then warned that if she stayed from his sight or left his room, she'd meet her end, and if she wanted to survive until the ritual, she must obey his commands. Sari was a strange girl who could see his very depth without effort. She knew that he was worried about her. Pissed at her behavior, he grabbed her and tightened his claws around her throat, asking if she feared him, but she replied that she knew something much scarier. It was back then when she was very little. Sari happened to be reading an old book on an awful stormy night, where she discovered her name to mean sacrifice in an ancient tongue. Being scared of the thunder and lightning, she woke her elder sister, Maria, who directed her to their parents. Little Sari did as she was told, but on getting to where her parents were, she overheard them discussing which family the next sacrifice would be from. She heard the relief in their voices with them saying they had a substitute who was taken in and raised for the purpose of protecting their real daughter. At that moment, Sari's teddy fell, and it alerted the adoptive parents. What scared her the most wasn't the fact that she recently discovered, but instead, the cold stares of the people she thought were her parents. Sari touched the king's muzzle as she said his eyes weren't like her parents', so she wasn't scared of him at all. Looking at him as if peering into his soul, she asked him if he was forcing himself to be angry. The king didn't reply to her question, instead remarking she was a girl to be pitied. Days later, they went outside the palace to Daghatau, an old fortress city closest to Yoana. Yoana was a term the monsters used to refer to the human country. Daghatau was dilapidated because of the war that happened here 100 years ago. Sai and Klops informed Sari that the king still visited the place for inspection. Curious to observe the environment, Sari scurried off to take in the view, where the king later met up with her, explaining that the lower zone she was looking at was a lawless place. Being the city furthest from the palace, it was a hotbed of rebellion. The people here often disregarded the old king's peace decree with the humans, making him visit frequently since he had to curb them with his power. Sadi suddenly smelled something nice. Following the scent, she found a field of flowers where she learned two things. One, the miasma here was very thin, and the other was that the king brought her here to show this to her. He explained he couldn't have her wandering around the palace due to boredom. Sadi was so glad to see such a beautiful sight and wanted to pick some flowers to bring back. He wondered why she wanted to take flowers to the castle, knowing fully well they would wilt. The king was mad when she called him adorable after placing the flowers on his head, but she told him that he made a scary face all the time and asked if having pretty things to look at made him feel better. In response, he suddenly picked her up, informing her that a storm was approaching. Later that night, as the king explained how the sacrificial procedure would go, Sadi jumped at him in fear upon seeing lightning flash. He wondered why she didn't fear beasts, but was scared of thunder. She couldn't help it. The lightning reminded her of that night where she learned her parents' secret. So, the king offered his tail to her, saying he couldn't have her wailing over every lightning flash. His tail could keep both the noise and light out, and oh boy, she really enjoyed its fluffiness. He called her fickle because just moments ago, she was quaking in terror, but she responded he was so warm she wasn't scared anymore. Falling asleep, she told him he didn't need to act tough in front of her, causing his eyes to widen. The two slept peacefully together. The time of the ritual arrived, and Sadi was dressed similarly to a bride. When she asked where the king was, Anubis told her he never reveals himself on ritual nights, the same as his predecessors did. With that, he walked her into a room where the king was supposed to be and shut the door on her. In the dark room, a monster attacked, pitting her down, planning to kill her. His objective was to usurp the throne because he felt the king was indecisive. As he tried to stab her, a different hand took the hit and it made the creature cower. In the room where the monster didn't know who was against him, Sadi defended the king, saying that he always tried to stop all the needless bloodshed he could and denied his own feelings to keep his people safe. She thought he was a great king. As the monster charged to slaughter her, the human who took the hit before showed Sadi his beautiful eyes and black hair before disarming the creature. The chameleon beast then quickly ran off in fear, and as the man tried leaving, Sadi stopped him, asking if he was actually the king. He then pointed at an exit for her to pass, but she was more concerned about his injury. Though he kept denying himself as king, Sadi disagreed. The king then explained that half his blood was human, and that he could never be truly man or beast. His curse was to be forced into his human form during full moons on the night of revelation, and he was ashamed that he couldn't even fool a girl despite his harsh behavior. He questioned how such a pitiful weakling could be a king. Sadi then tore off a part of her clothes and used it to cover his injured palm. She disagreed with him for calling himself weak and explained that Anubis told her he had never seen the king eat a sacrifice, and she called him the strongest person that ever lived for not hurting any human and leaving his own blood to deceive the monsters. She then said that if he released her, she had nowhere to go and would love her life to end with him eating her. After hearing her plea, the king broke her chains and hugged her. She thought the gesture meant that he would eat her and had accepted her fate, but on the contrary, he told her that she belonged to him. The following day, all the vassals and chancellors saw Sadi seated on the king's lap, and he declared her as his queen before the monsters. They instantly objected due to not wanting the human blood to mix with his, but he shushed them. So she came up with a name for him, which was Leonheart, meaning brave-hearted in her country's ancient language. And the two embraced. It was a name he could live with. After the meeting, some of the chancellors met with Leonhardt privately, begging him to reconsider his marriage decisions with Sadi, who was a human, and they wanted a queen of royal or noble lineage instead. Having heard enough, the king silenced them with a roar and death glare, telling them that as their leader, he wouldn't accept any arguments with his decisions. Sadi, meanwhile, had left her room and started roaming around the palace. Sai and Klops quickly rushed to her side, warning her not to wander on her own. She reflected on the state of things thus far. She had come here as a sacrifice to the king, and should have been eaten by now, but instead, learned the king was half human, and had been hurting himself all this time to spare the sacrifices. He's now decided to keep her by his side, even though she was raised as a sacrifice and had no home to go back to. She saw him as kind and strong, only making himself look scary to stop rebellions and pointless fighting. She couldn't sit still while he argued about her with important people every day. Turning, she slammed into Leonhardt, who immediately picked her up and questioned Sai and Klops for not doing their jobs properly. She quickly defended them, while calling the king by the new name she gave him, and this was Anubis's first time hearing it. In his room, he told her that he would be holding a court banquet where royalty and nobility from across his realm and its vassal states would attend. While telling her that she too would be present, Sadi asked why she would be at such an important event, and he responded that the Chancellors proposed it. He added further that they wanted her in the event so that the backlash he would receive from his people would make him change his mind. So, Sadi asked how she should behave, but Leo told her not to think about it, but to simply hold her head high. He also warned her not to call him Leonhardt at the banquet, or where people were from now on, believing that it would set a bad example. Instead, she should call him Sire, like she used to. Sadi agreed, and Leo left her in the room. After the day's meeting was over, and it was time for Leo to retire to bed, he found Sadi fast asleep by the window, so he picked her up. He noticed a flower on the ground, but was suddenly interrupted by her scream. He warned her not to shout in his ears, and was about to clamor on about how beasts' ears were more sensitive than humans. But Sadi apologized for falling asleep while he was still working. He asked her about the flowers on her lap, so she explained she made them herself. They were artificial flowers. She wanted to have these, considering the real flowers she picked wilted here in no time. Because of the miasma, they stayed pretty forever, so she hoped they'd help him relax whenever he returned to his chambers. With that, she put them all over his bed. He then took one and compared the false flowers to himself. Just like they weren't real, he considered himself a sham for being a king who hid his timid heart behind a snarl. Sadi disagreed with his take on the matter, pointing out that though they were artificial, a false flower could still touch someone's heart. That would make them as good as the real thing. Staring at Leo, she likened him to carpenter bees rather than flowers. They were big bees who seemed scary at first glance, but were actually very hardworking. She also gushed over them being big and fluffy like Leo. Leo thought of bees as creatures merely following their instincts, but Sadi, in contrast, found the dedication to their role to be beautiful. She insisted that he wasn't a fake, and hoped that one day she too would have a purpose like the bees. Shortly, she fell asleep on Leo's tail, which he used to cover her cozily. The following day, she stood by the palace walls and saw a lot of beastkin entering the gate. Cyclops told her that the king wasn't fond of having guests in the castle, and it had been ages since they were this busy. Anubis then showed up and told Sadi to be on her best behavior, and better still, not to say a word during the banquet. Though that went against the plan to entertain the guests she had beforehand. He reminded her that she was merely a sacrifice kept alive by His Majesty's whims, and the peerage would surely object. He even confessed that he refused to accept her as the king's consort, but since she was to stand by his side during the banquet, he would not permit her to sully the king's royal dignity with her conduct. He wanted her to know that being with the king was already a great hindrance. Still, during the banquet, the beastkin anticipated the bride their king was about to show them. Many even talked down on each other, finding some of the races not worthy enough to suit His Majesty, such as reptilians. Dang, they got racism amongst different beastkin? Who would have guessed? The king later walked into the hall, where everyone praised him, but were shocked seeing the human in his hands as he walked to his seat. They were completely against it, and started speaking out, but Leonhardt silenced them with a single roar, resulting in a tense atmosphere. Wondering how to help the king fix the situation, Sadi walked to the crowd against Anubis's will, but thanks to the king, she wasn't stopped. She served food to a noble of the horse tribe, who, intimidated by the king's watchful gaze, anxiously accepted it. After trying out and commending the food, the rest of the beast folks did the same and enjoyed their meals, thereby lightening the tension. Anubis, who watched the whole scene, was displeased and even complained to the king that Sadi didn't follow his instructions. The king agreed with the latter part, saying that she was indeed a girl who couldn't be governed by them. Sadi then sought to help more and went to the cooks. Upon seeing that she was a human, the head chef didn't allow her to join in. But when Cyclops informed him that she was the future queen, he quickly changed his mind. Rather than lashing out at her, he allowed her to enter his kitchen. She joined in and helped serve and arrange plates. Little did she know, one of the lizard folks lay in wait, with a plan to ruin her image before the king. As he saw her carrying a glass of wine to offer to the king, he tripped her, causing the wine to pour on His Majesty. Sadi quickly apologized as she tried to wipe the wine off the king, but the lizard folk blamed her for disrespecting him. This caused a great tension to rise once again, but Leo dispersed it by licking Sadi's face, uttering, "Not a bad vintage. I appreciate," while her face had become flushed. He then grabbed the lizard folk and nearly ripped him to shreds for tripping their future queen, but Sadi stopped him. So he freed the lizard and told the monster that he owed his life to the human girl he insulted. He wanted the lizard to always remember that. Leonhardt then walked off angrily, leaving the banquet early. After the banquet, seeing Sadi depressed, Cyclops tried to cheer her up, but she remembered how Anubis called her a hindrance to the king and felt that she was proving him right. Suddenly, a bright light shone beneath her feet, and she found Leo in front of her. He told her to hold him and to not let go. The next moment, she found herself in the air, riding Leo's holy beast, Gwyber. Confirming that she wasn't scared of heights, he flew her to bask in the winds. While in the air, Sadi learned that he took her on the ride to help her feel better. She thanked him and told him that she thought he was going to get rid of her, since his people didn't want a human queen. She also asked that if she ever became a burden to him, that he get rid of her. After flying a bit far from the kingdom, Leo landed on a cliff and squeezed her warmly. It was here he reminded her that he already devoured her once. She was a part of him now, and getting rid of her was the same as cutting off his limbs. She then spoke of the banquet and how he nearly lost his cool and almost slayed one of his men. She believed that if she weren't with him then, he would have ended up doing something he'd regret. Surprisingly, Leo told her that if a time like that came, she should stop him. He showed Sadi the view of his realm, telling her that being with her made him feel unshackled from the burdens of kingship, and he experienced a rare sense of freedom. He believed staying with her would enable him to become a mighty king. He then lifted her and asked her to stay with him. In response, she called him sire, but then he said he would like to hear his name, making her happy. So she called him Leonhardt, and his request became a reason for her to live. So she likened herself to a flower that would give nectar to a big bee flying through the fields. She kissed his nose, believing that someday she'd be a real flower. Anubis lectured Sadi on the 32 key cities and 15 vassal states of Osmargo Kingdom in the palace library, but she couldn't keep up, prompting him to scold her for not paying attention. Meanwhile, Sai and Klops were assisting by translating a lot of books into human language for her to understand. She took it upon herself, trying to learn about the kingdom, but it seemed a bit too much for her to take it all in, all at once. Seeing her struggle, Anubis thought it was futile for her, and said he would return to his chancellor duties. Clueless as to what he even did, Sadi asked for clarification, but it upset him and he angrily told her that he assisted the king in state affairs, revealing that the king had a lot of them to manage and hadn't been able to rest for a while now. Later, that night in the king's room, Sadi asked Leo for a chance to go outside the palace. She wanted to see how normal beasts lived. At first, he disagreed with her, but then changed his mind after she made it known that he deserved a break every once in a while. As soon as he agreed, she happily hugged him, telling him that she loved him. However, he only granted Sadi her wish on the condition that they were to disguise themselves. At one of the towns, Sadi wore a goat monster costume and laughed at Leo, who looked ridiculous, completely covered from head to toe. He reminded her of her promise. She must not cause any trouble and return home before dark. This was because they needed to be back before Anubis, who was sent to a neighboring town. Leo admitted that even he didn't want to hear his chancellor's complaints. Sadi addressed the king as sire, but he corrected her, so she called him by his name, holding his hand, and they explored the town. From checking out clothes to viewing ornaments, the couple walked through the bustling town. Sadi was then attracted to an aroma that came from a bakery, and almost accidentally revealed that she was from the palace. The baker's children then pointed at Leo's horns, saying they looked similar to their king's, but he was corrected by his father, who believed that his majesty would never put on such a shady outfit. Still talking about his majesty, the traders were happy that he wasn't like his predecessor, who often let only royals and aristocrats snatch up all the rarities. They believed their current king didn't care much for delicacies or fancy decorations, and that was the reason many of the traders were still in business. The two later sat away from the shops, where Sadi offered Leo her bread. She claimed she couldn't finish, and told him to say, "ah," and fed him. And he noted it wasn't bad, although it was like chewing on air. Not far away, Sadi heard a monster child crying, so she went to him and found out that he had lost his mom. Despite Leo telling her that it was getting late and they needed to return to the castle, she insisted on finding the child's mother. Left with no choice, Leo accompanied her. As they looked around for the monster's mom, Sadi felt dizzy carrying the child, so Leo placed him on his head for a better view. Sadi still patted the child, assuring that his mother would be found. Thankfully, the mother eventually showed up, thanking them for their help. But as soon as the child leapt from Leo, who is very tall, and headed for the ground, Sadi instinctively jumped to save him from the fall, unintentionally revealing her human self under the outfit. She faced intense hostility, being screamed at and shunned. The baby's mother even slapped her hands away while the others glared. many suspecting she was a thief. Stones were thrown, but before they could hit her, Leo intervened with his magic, teleporting away safely. Later at the palace, Anubis asked him where they were and informed them a human was spotted in the city. While he and his fellow officers presented subjects to be addressed by the king, Leo postponed their matters. Once he was alone with Sadi, she apologized for causing him trouble by being careless and scaring the townspeople. Curious, he asked Sadi if she thought the beasts in the market were afraid of humans, and she replied that they stared at her, just like humans stared at monsters. Sadi believed this was a result of the war. Even though monsters were stronger than humans, the ones she saw didn't look like they wanted to fight humans. Most humans didn't want to fight them either. After listening to her, Leo commented that beasts and humans seemed alike in her eyes, and her gaze could penetrate any deception. As he patted her head, he apologized for exposing her to danger, and confessed that he enjoyed his day of rest with her from the bottom of his heart. She then hugged him, but suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed, prompting a rushed treatment. Miasma was the cause, and the more she stayed in Osmargo, the worse it would be for her. In the room, Leo watched over Sadi, concerned for her condition, but she insisted he return to work, assuring him she was fine. With her falling asleep, the king vowed to save her. She woke up later, finding humans speaking to her, and realized she was back in human territory. They told her she'd been brought for treatment of miasma poisoning. When she tried to rise, they cautioned her to wait until she'd taken her medicine. The drug was made from ambrosia, a fruit that grew only in lands with the purest waters. Sadi was concerned that she didn't have any money to give them for her treatment, but they told her not to bother since they had been paid. 3 days ago, she was found unconscious in front of their clinic, with money which was more than enough for her treatment. The physician's wife handed Sadi a letter, which they found close to her unconscious body. Sadi opened it and saw that it was in beast writing. Although she didn't understand the language, she could tell that it was the king who dropped her off to save her. As time passed at the clinic, Sadi helped the couple with their house chores and was even mistaken for their assistant. She was a hard worker who was loved by the patients. One particular day, they told her that she was always welcome to stay with them if she didn't have anywhere else to go. This made Sadi remember Leo. She knew she couldn't stay in his kingdom because of the miasma, and if she went back, she would make him worry about her again. With that, she was determined to keep moving forward. Rumors began spreading around the village that Sadi was from Noel, the village that sent sacrifices to the monsters. While she went about doing her duties, the humans changed their attitudes by totally avoiding her. The looks she got from them were now similar to the ones the monsters gave her. She quickly ran back to the clinic, but on getting there, she saw the windows had been destroyed. Worriedly rushing in to learn what happened, she saw the doctor had been wounded by the townsfolk. He told her that the villagers called her a sacrifice that escaped from the beast's lands, and they were worried that the monsters would burn their place to the ground. So, the couple told Sadi to leave, since they didn't want any trouble. That same night, Sadi roamed the forest. She felt cold and tried acting tough, saying she was used to being treated this way, but broke into tears, hoping Leo would come for her. Unfortunately, she lost her footing and nearly fell down the cliff, but her king saved her, telling her that he'd been looking for her. And when Sadi asked why he was in his human form, he explained that outside the miasma, he'd lose his powers and bestial form, which hindered his ability to track her. She thought he left her behind, but he was confused, asking her about the letter he left for her. She confessed that she couldn't read beast language, so he explained that he actually penned a promise to come back for her, and then removed a ring for her to wear. It was made of ambrosia fruit, which purified miasma. It took Leo time to acquire before he used his magic to crystallize it. She then wore the ring like a wedding band, asking if she could stay with him, and in response, he put his head close to hers, without telling her the answer, but said it should be obvious. She was his queen. Back in Osmargo, Sai and Klops were happy Sadi was back, and she confirmed that the miasma wasn't affecting her anymore. In the king's room, she told Leo that she wanted to learn more about his land and the people. He admitted it wouldn't be an easy feat, but she was determined to do so. She showed him the ring, signifying that she belonged to him. He then told her that she could remove it after her body had slowly adjusted to the miasma of the land, but she shushed him. He had ignorantly put the ring on her left ring finger, which in the human world signified a promise to stay together forever. So she leaned up and kissed him, like I'd kiss you for liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Platonically, of course. We can do it French style. Hold the tongue, because here at My Shoujo Weekly, you'll be speechless when you see the vast collection of shoujo stories I have to share with you. I got action, I got romance, I got drama. So come on, hit that subscribe and give me a like. In a hall of portraits, Cyclops asked Sadi why she suddenly had the urge to see images of the late king and queen. She answered that since Leo was half human, she felt that he must have gotten his human blood from his mother. The two then informed her that her portrait would also be on the walls once she became queen, prompting her to wonder, could she really be their queen? Walking down the hallway, Sai got kicked by one of the feline beast folk, so their leader apologized, introducing herself as Vivian, the princess of Byzond. She praised Sadi's charms, saying that it might be difficult for her to be the king's bride, as she's come to ask for his hand in marriage. Later in the throne room, Leo roared at his advisors, asking them who approved of his meeting with the princess. As the men cowered, Anubis walked in, admitting that it was him. He explained that since Sadi debuted at the banquet, they had been faced with a lot of protests and questions from all quarters. He then stated that if His Majesty took a human queen, mending relations with their slighted peers might be impossible. Anubis was aware of the fact that His Majesty always rejected marriage proposals, but now asked that the king would at least give his potential brides an audience. After hearing what Vivian said, Sai rejected her, saying Sadi would be their future queen. The cat princess understood, but before she could explain, two other princesses from different races, Horse and Hare, Cora and Alba, showed up. Vivian told Sadi that each of the princesses was sent with the hopes of their nations on their shoulders, and they wouldn't be able to face their countrymen if the king couldn't at least make them his concubines. And with that, she excused herself. Later that night, Leo roared after hearing Sadi ask him to meet with the princesses and at least hear them out. He called it a waste of time, vowing not to meet with them or take any concubine. Man, what a loyal guy. Sadi, who understood Anubis' reasoning, told Leo that he was dealing with so much trouble because of her, and he shouldn't upset important people more than he could help. Leo asked her if she was sure of her decision, because making those princesses his concubines meant that she would be risking her position as the future queen. As she was about to tell him that she didn't mind because she didn't want to hold him back, he pinned her on his bed, asking her if she meant that he was too weak as a king to support her. She then retorted, telling him that's not what she meant, and asked him why he was acting weird. But Leo insisted that she was the odd one and told her to go to bed since he was done discussing. She was angered and hid in the library with Cyclops, who felt threatened that they'd be scolded for hiding her. She tried defending Leo, saying he wouldn't lose his temper. All Sadi ever wanted was to be by Leo's side, and not to be something grand like the queen. So she made up her mind to discuss the matter with him again. Heading back to Leo's bedroom, she heard someone else try to woo him into being accepted as a concubine. She hurriedly pushed the door open, screaming, "No!" but then ran off, excusing herself for intruding. This pissed Leo off, since the person he was up all night waiting for wasn't Vivian, and yelled at her to leave his presence and never show herself ever again. Sadi went back to the library and slept with Cyclops, feeling pained as if something sharp got caught in her throat. The following day, while Leo had breakfast with all the princesses who came to his palace, there was an awkward moment when he and Sadi reached for the food on a plate. As they dined, the princesses began to sweet-talk him into visiting their kingdoms, bragging about the things they had, like a competition. He urged them to be quiet, and they obeyed immediately. One of them, a reptilian named Amit, was so clumsy that she poured her drink on herself. The rest of them started whispering bad things about her physique, but to their surprise, Sadi worriedly went to her, and after confirming that the princess was alright, she escorted Amit to get some fresh air. Amit apologized profusely outside. She was very scared of the king, making Sadi wondered why she wanted to get married to him. So, Amit explained that her kingdom, Murga, used to be at war with Osmargo 200 years ago, and since they were one of the last to become a vassal state, they had been discriminated against. Amit had hoped to become a concubine for her kingdom's sake, but because the others were more beautiful than her, she lost all hope. Unfortunately, she couldn't return home without winning the king's heart, and just like Sadi, she was shackled by fate. Shortly, an announcement rang, informing them that the king's royal guard, Jormungand, was back from his expedition. The reptile walked in to talk with the king, but Anubis was uptight about Jormungand changing his outfit. The royal guard spotted Sadi outside and went to introduce himself to her. He knelt before her, saying that he was fine with the king's decision and hoped she wouldn't disappoint him or his majesty, after which he excused himself and went with Anubis. Cyclops explained to her that Jormungand was a commoner who rose in ranks to become the king's royal and most trusted guard. She then saw Amit, who was shy of meeting the guard, hiding. The princess then explained her first encounter with him, confessing that she had fallen in love with the royal guard. Sadi, who at first said she didn't understand the phenomenon called love, was surprised to see that it fits the requirements listed by the reptile. Although a bit too energetic, Amit encouraged Sadi in her pursuit of love, But watching aside, the other princesses planned to show Amit her place. That night, a banquet was to be held for Jormungan's return. As Sadi walked through the hallway, she saw Amit sitting in the corner, looking hopeless with her dress torn. After realizing the other princesses were the perpetrators, Sadi took off her own clothes and gave them to Amit to put on. She wanted to make sure Amit would get a chance to be with Jormungan. At the banquet, Leo stopped Anubis from scolding Sadi for not wearing the formal dress he prepared for her. The other princess shyly asked for Amit, as they had planned to make her the object of ridicule. But they were shocked to see the reptilian princess walking in a stunning dress. She apologized and went straight to Jormungan, fumbling as she tried to connect words to form a sentence. Thanks to Sari's words of encouragement, she showed the royal guard a piece of clothing he gave her when she was little, and he bowed towards her. The piece helped him remember her. Sari was poured a glass of wine as she watched the event. She spotted Vivian staring at her from the corner of her eye, but paid no heed to it. But as soon as she took a sip from her cup, she passed out. Waking up, she found herself outside the hall, where Vivian approached her and ordered her to pave the way for her to the throne. She was angry that her seduction didn't work on the king, despite being a pro at making men bow to her will. She insulted the king, calling him worthless for falling in love with a human, and believed that he could serve as her puppet. Sadi then coldly replied that even without her being around, she was sure that Leo wouldn't keep Vivian by his side. She explained that the king suffered under his authority more than anyone, but tried to hide it from everyone. Knowing the king's predicament, Sadi vowed not to stand aside for Vivian, even if she couldn't be Leo's queen. Infuriated, Vivian lunged at Sadi, but Amit held her back. She then threw Amit off her and tried to attack Sadi again. This time around, Leo showed up to protect them and reminded Vivian of the warning he gave her the night before, telling her to leave his sight forever again, leaving her to be escorted out as she bawled. As he was about to return to the banquet, Sadi apologized for their heated argument the night before, and he too apologized for being too harsh with her. Outside, Anubis noted that none of the princesses managed to move the king's heart. A figure startled him from behind, and he saw that it was Amit. She was the only princess allowed to stay because she protected Sadi, making him curse inwardly for granting his human nemesis an ally. While in the king's room, Leo told Sadi not to sympathize with Vivian and the rest of the princesses. He then informed her that he didn't need any other woman, since she was the only one he desired, triggering a bell to ring in her. And now she confirmed that Leo was the one for her. Blushing and feeling very shy, she hid under his fluffy tail. The feeling seemed strange to her, but she hoped to someday figure out if she belonged beside his warmth. On another day, Sadi tried some of Amit's sugary treats and she loved them. Amit, who lacked magical power, had something she could boast: her baking skills. So, Sadi requested baking lessons from her, prompting the inquisitive reptile to ask if she had someone special in mind to bake for. It made Sadi blush, thinking about Leo. Jormungan showed up, but had to reject Amit's treat because of his upcoming training. He then informed Sadi that he had business with her, so they left to join a meeting which Anubis had suggested with the king and the senate. On their way, Jormungan spoke of Anubis having a sharp tongue, but always doing everything for the king's sake, even if it meant going against his majesty's will. With them seated at the meeting, Anubis started his proposal. He stated that in order for the people to accept Sadi as their queen, there were lists of conditions she must fulfill. First and foremost, she must learn to command a holy beast, since it was custom for queens in their land to traditionally forge a pact with one when they get married. Having a holy beast was a symbol of authority. Leo got pissed because of what Anubis was suggesting. He knew fully well that Sadi didn't have any magical power, so if she tried to make a pact, her life would be consumed in place of magic. To worsen the case, if she mistakenly summoned a wicked demon, it would claim her since she lacked the power to resist it, causing her to wander hell for eternity and be unable to die. Which is why Anubis added that she wouldn't be forced to partake, but instead freely choose to or not. The angered king left the meeting, shouting that his queen was his to choose. Sadi went after him, and he told her that he would make them accept her. He wouldn't let anyone stand between them. She then remembered what Jormungan said about Anubis doing everything he could. Despite Leo assuring to do what he could to keep her in the realm, Sadi continued studying on how to form a pact. Sai and Klops were against the idea because they were worried, wondering why they were so good to her. She asked why they cared. So, they told her they used to be runts of the Cyclopean clan, until they were rescued by the king and given honest jobs. Whatever mattered to their king mattered to them, and Sadi was also nice to them, and they cared for her. She later watched Jormungan train some other guards, and noted that everyone was doing whatever they could for the king. She wished there was a way she could be of help to him too. The following day, Sadi met Anubis to form a pact contract that he discussed with everyone the other day. Leo, entering in, saw that the deed had been done, and he wasn't happy about
about it. She apologized and explained that she had been looking for ways to help him, and now that one had finally shown up, she had to agree to it. She wanted to win everyone's heart and told Leo she was offering him her life. Later that day, Sadi made preparations for the summoning ritual. After drawing the magic circle, she started chanting the contractual spell from the book, but something bad happened. She lost her strength and couldn't complete the spell. When she touched the magic circle, she was thrown back. Still determined, she got up, despite being out of energy, and tried again, but was thrown back still. This time, she was unable to move. She was sore and thought Leo was right about her being unable to complete the trial. She had reached her limit for the day and would try again the next. She redrew the summoning circle and kept on trying, but was thrown back again. She continued time and time again, but she kept failing. After one of the attempts, Leo caught her and took her away, even though Anubis was against it. In his room, Leo warned her of the fatal consequences of continuing the ritual, but she was resolute. When she referred to herself as a sacrifice, Leo corrected her, asserting that she belonged to him and he didn't want to lose her. Later that day, she went back and continued the summoning ritual. Halfway through chanting, flames came out of the magic circle, but they didn't burn her. This was different from the previous trials. Sadi, through sheer determination, picked up the spellbook and continued the ritual. With a pure heart and strong will, she finished chanting the spells, driven by her desire to be with Leo. The flames ceased, and she saw a small, fat bird in the middle of the circle. Exhausted, Sadi fell, but Leo caught her in his arms once again. Later, her bird voraciously devoured all her food in her room. The bird was awfully rude, and he introduced himself as Bennu, the Great, the one and only Phoenix, the only beast to have powers of immortality and rebirth. The name didn't quite match his appearance, though. He was once a sacred bird with gold and scarlet plumage. People even supposedly called him the most beautiful and sublime holy beast out there. But unfortunately, only summoners could understand their beast's speech, so everything the bird said to anyone except Sadi didn't get across. Anubis showed up in her recovery room and insulted Bennu for not looking like the holy beast of a queen. After he left, the fellow senators found what he said to be unwise, but he assured them the bird was only a shell of its former self and had long lost its powers. Later, Sadi tried teaching Bennu how to fly, and after a lot of failed attempts, Bennu gave up. He had used most of his powers to heal and resurrect people, but was now nothing but a grounded chicken. Despite his current look, Sadi thanked the bird for forming a pact with her. She didn't care what others said about Bennu, and believed he was magnificent. Later, when delivering a meal for the bird, she saw him trying to learn how to fly, but somewhere not too far off, two intruders watched. One aimed an arrow at Bennu, saying the amount for this job would allow them to live for half a year. As Bennu struggled, he wondered why he kept on trying, but then Sadi flashed into his mind. The bird flapped his tiny wings, gliding safely, but an arrow came at him, endangering him, and it led to Bennu losing his footing. While falling, Sadi leapt after her beast to catch him, but they both descended to their doom, or so it looked. Just before they hit the ground, Bennu inwardly insulted her for jumping after him, since he was immortal. Still, he felt very emotional that someone cared for him, so the unexpected happened. He transformed into a giant phoenix and flew with her on his back. She was surprised that he still had his powers, and in response, Bennu reminded her he was the immortal phoenix, which meant that as long as she believed in him, he would always come back to life. Everyone in the palace was shocked to see the phoenix in his full, beautiful form. Since he hadn't flown in a long time, he got tired and threw Sadi towards Leo to catch. She gleefully hugged Leo, thinking that as long as someone believed in her, she would be strong, no matter how long it'd take. Anubis met with the king and told Sadi to continue the remaining requirements, since she had brilliantly achieved the first one. Leo replied that there wasn't a need to rush things, but Anubis simply suggested it because he thought Sadi would wish to wed his majesty as soon as possible. Changing the topic, Leo asked him what he had learned about the intruders in his palace. Anubis replied, saying just as Set was interrogating them. This discussion made one of the senators sweat buckets, since he was the one who secretly employed them. Set then entered the meeting room and reported to the king that the intruders had taken their own lives. He apologized for using harsh means to threaten the individuals, and said he wasn't able to find the mastermind behind their appearance. He continued, stating that based on the interrogation, it seemed the intruders fired impulsively upon seeing a human. This made Leo declare that he wouldn't condone rash killing, even of heinous criminals. He ordered Set to make his torture methods worse than death, so that offenders would live while never thinking of defying him a second time. Outside the palace, the guards were on high alert due to the recent intrusion. Suddenly, a human ambushed one of them, pointing his weapon towards their neck, demanding to see the king. Sadi savored one of Amit's cookies, baked to celebrate her overcoming her first ordeal. A commotion was heard, so Sadi went to the source and found out that it was Ilia, her human acquaintance, who stormed into the palace to confront the king, asking about Sadi's whereabouts. At first, he struggled in the dungeon where he was bound by chains, but as soon as he saw that Sadi was okay, he calmed down, shedding a tear of relief. Later, Sadi pleaded with Leo to pardon Ilia, but his advisors were against it. They demanded that Ilia be punished for attacking the guards. Determined to have her friend released, Sadi begged that she receive Ilia's punishment instead, prompting Leo to ask what Ilia said when he arrived. Upon learning that the aforementioned wanted to meet with him, Leo demanded that Ilia be pardoned, claiming he just didn't know the correct etiquette to request a meeting. Immediately, the advisors objected, but a glare from the vicious king was more than enough to silence them. After the advisors departed, Sadi thanked Leo for his assistance, but he inquired about her connection to Ilia. So, she explained that she and Ilia were childhood friends. She shared that after monsters attacked Ilia's village, he set out on a journey to train with the warrior who saved him. During that time, Ilia met Sadi, who was a shy girl concerned about his well-being. Sadi recalled the day she gave him a medicinal herb to help him with his wounds. But then he acted tough, saying that he was training to become a big, strong man who could beat anyone. He even told her that if she was ever in trouble, she should come to him. Sadi believed Ilia's actions might come from the fact that he didn't know she was to be a sacrifice, possibly feeling he failed to protect her. Recognizing her role in his intrusion, she felt compelled to assist him. But, reading too much into the subject, Leo asked if that was the only reason she wanted to help Ilia. Sadi didn't understand him, but either way, Leo allowed her to meet Ilia. After Sadi left, Leo reflected on the look she gave the boy, acknowledging his own petty jealousy. The guards released Ilia with the condition that he wouldn't set foot in Osmargo again. Immediately, his hands were free, so he pinned Anubis to the wall, telling him to be grateful to Sadi, or he'd have killed all the monsters in the castle if she'd been harmed. Just as Sadi arrived, Ilia took her hand and attempted to leave the castle with her. Leo intervened, telling Ilia that Sadi was to be his bride. Leo was shocked hearing this, and Anubis smiled at his reaction. Leo then ordered that Ilia be taken away, but he collapsed while struggling, prompting Sadi to rush to him out of concern. Thanks to Anubis' suggestion and the king's approval, Ilia was allowed to stay one more day in the palace for him to recover before being sent home. In the guest room, Sadi tried convincing Ilia to eat, but he refused, despite his stomach grumbling, making her remember how tough he'd act when they were little. And she thanked him for coming out of concern for her. Remembering what Leo said about being engaged to Sadi, Ilia asked her if it was true, and she confirmed it. He then proposed that she should leave the palace with him, suggesting they'd live together, leveraging his connections with various villages. When Amit entered to bring him treats, Ilia snapped at her, slapping away the snacks and ordering her to leave, calling her a monster. His intense glare frightened Amit, who retreated quickly. Sadi tried to confront him, but he pinned her to the wall, asking why she was being friendly with the beasts. He thought the idea of her being Leo's queen to be ridiculous, that beasts would never treat humans as equals, adding that she was nothing more than Leo's exotic pet, and would be tossed off when he was bored of her. Sadi was empathetic, knowing Ilia's hometown was destroyed by beasts, but she wanted him to understand that the king was as he claimed. Favoring a human like him might harm his position, but Leo still made an exception. He stood up for her the same way. She believed in him, and wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. When she told Ilia she couldn't go with him, he let her go while expressing shock. Amit saw Sadi outside and went to meet her. Sadi apologized for how Ilia acted, claiming he was a kind person. She even mentioned instances where he showed her kindness, remembering that Ilia never acted violently despite being strong. Sadi remembered the look in Ilia's eyes when he grabbed her hands, and it scared her. As Leo and Anubis concluded their meeting, they noticed Sadi bringing food to Ilia's room. Anubis commented that despite Sadi abandoning her homeland, she likely found comfort in the company of a fellow human. Sadi told Cyclops to wait for her at the door, since Ilia was currently on bad terms with monsters. When she tried opening the door, she hesitated for a bit and wondered if she was scared of him. She calmed herself and entered the room, offering him his dinner and wanting to continue from where they stopped, believing this might be their last conversation until they met again. He walked up to her before softly striking her on the neck, rendering her unconscious in his arms. He apologized, saying he would take her with him to where monsters couldn't reach. Cyclops reported to Leo that Sadi had disappeared since they didn't see her come out of Ilia's room. and suspected that Ilia must have snuck out with her. Confirming their suspicions, some guards hurriedly reported that Ilia had taken his weapons and fled. Leo then decided to find Sadi himself, but Anubis was heavily against it, and even suggested that Sadi wasn't taken against her will. He reminded Leo that life would be difficult for Sadi in their realm compared to the human realm. This made the king hesitate, and he nearly gave up on pursuing her. Everything would have gone the way Anubis wanted, but Amit was a cog in his plans. She told the king to go after Sadi, because with the little time she had known her, Amit saw her risk her life to attempt the ordeals, because her heart belonged to him. Anubis quickly interrupted, informing the king that the palace was in disarray, and that if he left, it wouldn't be good. But then Jormungand arrived unexpectedly, 2 days earlier than Anubis had anticipated. Leo thus ordered him to manage the palace in his absence, then summoned his magic beast and flew into the night, without paying heed to Anubis's worries. Gwyber expressed his trouble tracking Sadi, since humans had weak presence. Luckily, Bennu appeared, offering to track her since he shared a direct connection with her. He pointed Gwyber in the right direction, and they headed after the humans. Ilia had carried Sadi far from the palace, and they had entered into the Hyenian turf. The beastmen stopped him from proceeding through their town, and demanded that he drop Sadi, wanting to gnaw her to the bone. So, he fought them off while slaughtering most of them. When Sadi woke up, she saw him about to kill a little beast cub, so she held him back and told the monster to run away. After that, she questioned Ilia's morals, but he simply said the cub would kill humans when grown. Half measures couldn't save anyone. He believed the beasts must have charmed Sadi and vowed to kill every last one of them. Concerned, Sadi asked him why he was ready to go that far for her. So in response, he dragged her into a room and pinned her to the bed before confessing that he was in love with her. He had always been since they were kids. Sadi apologized to Ilia because she couldn't accept his feelings. She told him he wasn't seeing her at all, and the only thing in his eyes was hate. It was so much that it terrified her and made her sad. She couldn't blame him for hating the creatures who attacked his home, but said that not all beasts wanted to dispute. There were all kinds of beasts. Some were nice, and others were scared, just like humans. Sadi knew that making such a world where humans and beasts wouldn't fight might be unrealistic, but she told Ilia that it was what the Beast King was trying to achieve. She advised Ilia to trust her judgment regarding the king, but in response, Ilia told her that she knew nothing. He agreed that there were plenty of scum amongst humans, but claimed that beasts were fundamentally different. Everything he cared about was taken from him. 13 years ago, Ilia chased off some kids who made his adopted sister cry. They told her that she was adopted and would be sacrificed eventually, but Ilia disagreed and vowed to protect her. Later that day, they waited for their mom, but she arrived late, panting. She quickly locked them in her closet, warning them not to make a sound, no matter what, and asked Ilia to take care of his sister. Moments later, they heard a scream and a crunching noise. A monster then opened the closet and took Ilia's sister, tearing her limbs before devouring her. The sight was forever ingrained in his eyes, and he lost his reason to live. Monsters generally preferred to consume female humans over males, so they used Ilia for their amusement, betting on the poor boy to see how far he could run before they caught him. If Ilia's teacher hadn't found him on the way, the monsters would have killed him like a bug. Ilia, who had lost everything, found hope, but the monsters again wanted to take Sadi from him. He concluded that as long as beasts existed, humans would never be able to live in peace. Learning Ilia's backstory, Sadi realized that his hatred and sadness were far deeper than she thought, and she knew that she couldn't stop him. Ilia sensed that the monsters behind him were close by, so he decided to tie Sadi up at the entrance to watch him fight. Leo descended and demanded that Ilia return his queen. Ilia responded that Leo should fight for her if he wanted to get her back. Sadi watched in distress, but Bennu had snuck up to meet her. She begged the bird to untie her, but Bennu, knowing that she would want to interrupt the fight, warned her to leave them because there were times men needed to settle things with their fists. She was more concerned about Ilia because he didn't stand a chance against the king of beasts. Ilia also knew that, but wouldn't give up. At some point, Leo used his magic power to send Ilia flying, and out of the corner of his eye, noticing Sadi worryingly looking at Ilia, he let his guard down, and Ilia insulted him. Leo wanted Leo to act out by tearing him apart like any beast would. His goal was to have Leo reveal his terrible nature to Sadi, so she would side with him instead. Ilia picked up his sword and charged at Leo with it, but to his surprise, Leo let him plunge the blade into his body. Ilia wondered why, and Leo said it was because it would sadden Sadi. Bennu then released Sadi, and she ran to Leo, crying, pleading for him not to die. Ilia then realized that he had become what he despised. When they were little, he told Sadi that he would protect her. Leo told Sadi he wouldn't die from this, and then signaled her to look at Ilia Ilia, who was on the floor regretting his actions. She went to hug Ilia and apologized, telling him that he was the reason her childhood was peaceful and thanked him. Banu then healed Leo's wounds and transformed fully into a giant phoenix to take Ilia out of Osmargo. Leo sentenced Ilia to semi-permanent deportation. The two made a vow. Ilia told Leo that if he ever made Sadi cry, he'd come back for her, and the king would keep these words in mind. As Banu took him to the border, Sadi could see Ilia was scared of heights. She smiled, telling him not to act tough, and he remarked that it had been a long time since she smiled this brightly. Landing, he told her it wasn't her fault, and admitted he was blinded by hate. He pecked her forehead, trusting her judgment regarding the king, reminding her once again that he was serious about loving her, before walking off. On their way back to the palace, Sadi apologized for all the troubles Leo went through, but Leo informed her that he owed her an apology because he hesitated coming after her and thought that life with Ilia in the human realm would make her happier. She touched his chest, telling him that the home she longed for wasn't in the human realm nor the beast realm, but with him instead. Upon getting to the palace, Sai, Klops, and Amit were glad to see her return. Sadi saw Anubis glare at her and thought that there would be beasts who hate humans and vice versa, no matter how hard Leo worked. Later, she joined Amit and the others at the tea party, which was to celebrate her safe return. Leo joined her at the table and could see that her mood was a bit down, so he told her that she wouldn't change reality by grieving alone. Leo informed her that both humans and beasts were gathered at the table, which meant that there were people who rejoiced at her safe arrival. Sadi hoped that one day, their little table would grow and fill the world. Okay, I'm gonna stop here on this series for now. And then apologies, everyone. I know I sound a bit congested. I've been sick since Tuesday, and I really haven't been sick since 2021, so maybe I was due for it. So hopefully on future recordings, I sound a bit better. But yeah, coming very soon, I am pretty excited to bring manhwa onto the channel. Here is a little preview of some of the stuff I'm working on upcoming. For her lowly birth, spent the prince's fortune and committed wickedness in his name. And this led to him calling for her execution. A predictable end for a predictable villainess. Big problem for a fan of this series, though, is that she was reincarnated as Carnelia, sucked into the novel she was reading. She was now the villainess, destined to die by the young boy protagonist in the future, and stuck in a bridal chamber with him. But yeah, if enough people like this video though, then I'll probably continue it pretty soon. But if not, look forward to the future manhwa content. Subscribe for more, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.